Recording started. So yeah, I just wanted to run through, I've got a few slides. It's not going to be death by PowerPoint. There's a few of us in here. So if you guys have got specific questions, specific experiences, things that you want to ask about, friends that have been kind of conned or potentially, just drop it into the chat and we can kind of chat through some specific stuff as well about how to protect against that type of thing. So just a little bit about me. I'm managing director at a company called Mintivo. As Anita said, we're based in Chippenham. We kind of offer fully outsourced IT support, cybersecurity, cloud migration services. I know I work with a couple of you on the call already. So that's what we do. I've been working in around cyber as either a white hat hacker or a social engineer, or kind of stress testing organizations for cybersecurity for years now, as well as looking after IT. So what I wanted to run through is kind of what most of these seminars are. Most of these webinars are really in-depth with like 1 million slides, and it's incomprehensibly technical, and you need to buy some product that's really expensive and it's got loads of guarantees that don't kind of really come to life. It's just more technical, blah, blah, rubbish. So given this audience, given Anita, and we've worked together for a long time, I just thought, if you've got questions, let's make this kind of super easy to understand and take action on. Interactive, like I say, drop messages in the chat if you need to ask questions, or if you want specific things answering, that really helps you. I'm hopefully going to make it useful for you guys, based on what I've seen in the last 10 or so years, based on what's happening specifically in the last 12 months. As Anita said, a lot of things have kind of changed, and things are getting more sophisticated, but also, you know, Harriet and Lindsay have kind of mentioned about not being back in the office and not physically being near people, and having to rely on technical communication opens up a whole new way of kind of being tricked. And in the office, you could look over and see someone, and now not so much. So there's a few changes that have happened we've seen in the last year or so. And you know, I'm going to get to the point so we don't have to worry about too much technical stuff. I was looking yesterday, actually, there's a company called the NCSC, which is the business-facing part of GCHQ. All of you guys should look at that, or your IT providers certainly should be. Their current advice is really simple to understand, and you know, where I got a lot of inspiration from this talk was the really easy to understand parts of the NCSC. And 5 out of the 6 ways they're saying you should protect your business and your personal online identity aren't really that technical. One of them is, that's what your IT provider should be covering. That's all to do with firewalls and software and all the really geeky stuff. But the other 5 are kind of what I'm going to run through today, and it's just stuff that you guys can do quite simply. Has anyone got any questions at the start? Are we happy to carry on? Yeah, good. So the first one, social media and sharing data online. Everyone does it. Everyone needs to do it for their business. It's really useful. Staying in touch, friends and family, great for business. You know, we're all doing it kind of now. Building communities online. But the reality is, you know, you've probably seen things like this on Facebook. So your wrestling name, the car you passed your test in, all of this stuff is at best a kind of scummy way for pages to kind of gain engagement and reach more people. The reality is most of these are to get information from you. So the information that you give away is sensitive to you, is often the way to get into accounts, is often password reset questions. Have you all seen things like this engaging you to kind of answer information on Facebook specifically is where a lot of these come from. So the advice here, like I say, not overly technical. Audit your social media profile. It sounds really boring, but if you look at your Facebook account not from your account, there's a way on Facebook just under the profile picture where you can say, let me see my profile as if I'm not connected. And you'd be amazed how much information you can get just from the odd photo you upload over the years that you don't really remember the security on. So audit your social media profiles, have a look at what you share, whether you're comfortable for that information to be public. Remember that employers look too. some of us here are recruiting, we always look on social media profiles. So not only is it a cybersecurity issue, but it certainly hurt your job opportunities as well if your social media profile's too open. Think about the information that you're sharing. And the best advice I've had, and it has kind of resonated with a lot of people, is that when you post on social, specifically personal social media really, but if you think that what you're posting is going to be public, tied against your name and be online forever, it's a really good benchmark about whether you should really post it or not. There was a story a while ago around the police commissioner for Kent brought on a junior to kind of help speak to the youth of the area. And when she was put into post, reporters kind of trawled back through years and years of tweets and were kind of 6 years back when she was a teenager, and she was posting about being in the park and getting drunk with her friends and everything else. And it ended up losing her position just from a stupid post when you're a teenager. So that stuff now is starting to, starting to hurt careers long term, especially now if people are coming up through into jobs where they were teenagers when social media kind of started, or even younger. So just think, if you're thinking about what you're posting is public forever and against your name, it just gives a real good barometer to whether you should post it or not. Phishing. I'm assuming everyone here has had a phishing email, something from HMRC or PayPal or Amazon or something like that. Looking at everyone nodding, I'm guessing yes. These used to be really easy and obvious to spot. I'm kind of making a joke about a Nigerian prince there, because that's often what it used to be. Someone had left you millions and millions of pounds and you just had to pay the admin fee of whatever it was to kind of release the money. And quite quickly you realize that's rubbish. And they're really better than they used to be. And the HMRC one's the one doing the rounds at the moment, but there's loads that look way, way better than, certainly from our end, from a technical point of view, we're seeing emails that are really, really hard to spot and distinguish from real ones. This is one I was going to send to everyone today. I haven't sent it just because of GDPR and all sorts of legal things I needed to tick off first, but I'll happily share this with anyone who wants it afterwards. So let me know if you want in the chat. So this is an email that was a legit email from Eventbrite for this event. We've run it through a simulator we've got. And what this does is this will send an email out, but all of these links will take you to a page about training. So it will tell you around what we do with our emails is that when you click on this link, it'll ask you to log into Eventbrite. It will then kind of get your details. It will take your email address and password and give someone else access to your account. So the main things to look for when you receive an email is that, and this used to be more relevant than it is now. So I'll cover this now, but an urgent call to action is always a biggie, with a consequence if you don't. So what I mean by that is your account is on hold, click here or you lose your account. If you don't, this will happen. Legit emails often will be there as a problem, log in to have a look, but there's never a consequence for non-action. That's always a big red flag. Look at the sender address. So as you can see, this email that we've crafted from Eventbrite has actually come from a domain that's nothing to do with Eventbrite. It's come from marketsgrowth.com. So it's still kind of legit-ish looking, but look at who the sender is and whether that is actually Eventbrite. Looking at how you've been addressed in the email is another really, really easy one. Hi, Chris means at least that company knows my name rather than just hi, customer, or dear sir, dear madam is kind of more generic. So at least they've got one extra step of information. This is the big one, really. If you hover over the links in the email, before you click on it, it will pop up and tell you where that link's going. It will show you the name of the website, whether that's Eventbrite or whether that's somewhere completely random. So if you hover over the link, you'll see where that's going. And finally, all of these are becoming less and less relevant as these emails get more and more sophisticated. So the real trick is if you get an email from Eventbrite and you think it's might be real, might not, don't click anything in the email. Just go to the Eventbrite website, log in, have a look, or PayPal or Amazon or wherever it's come from, your bank. Don't click the links, just go to the website directly and log in. If there's legitimately a problem, you'll be able to see it from the website. And finally, this is more one for your IT company, but really the only thing that's going to really protect you is training and education. It's a boring one. It's not a technical problem, but just constantly learning about what to look for, what's coming out in the market, talking to your IT company to run these sorts of simulations is really going to help. So if you would have clicked any of the links in this email, it takes you to this page. It says you've been phished. It says it's part of a training exam. There's a video for you to watch to explain what it is, what happened, why you clicked on it, what you should watch for, and just some more information on it. So having proactive emails coming through that you can constantly look at and train people on. We've seen huge engagement for the customers we've got using this at the moment. An initial email we sent out to 400 people at a company we look after. We had something like 150 of the 400 click on the email in the first day. Constantly running this simulator for a few months, brought that down into like 1 or 2 people. So they just get some kind of one-on-one training to really understand what they should be looking for in email. So it's a really, really easy way to protect a company from knowing what's going on. There's plenty of these that are online that are free. I'm sure your IT provider or cybersecurity provider can run a phishing simulator for you as well. So that's a really good way, but training is the fix for that one. So social engineering, this is a fancy term for conning people really, but it's using information gained online to impersonate. So again, the more and more information we put online, the more we share on social media, like I spoke about earlier, the easier it is to convince someone that you are who you're trying to say you are. Used to be a bad grammar, dodgy spelling, the format of the email was wrong, all sorts of problems, but no longer the case. This now, social engineering, hacking, tricking people is becoming a real business. The margins are great. You send a couple of emails, you might get 10, 20,000 pounds. It's a good business model. It's not a legal business model, but the reason it works is, and the reason people are investing time in the research piece is just pure business, financial, monetary gain reasons. Hyper convincing personal emails. So the example I kind of worked on a few years ago was a chief exec. So a chief exec called Bob went off skiing. He emailed in to his finance director. Hey Jenny, I'm off skiing. I'm with Jenny and the kids. We're in Val d'Isere. We're working on a merger and acquisition. I really need you to keep it to yourself, but just send 20,000 across to the solicitors. Otherwise, we're going to lose the deal. So the financial director that receives the email knows that is the chief exec. They do talk informally. That is his wife's name. He is skiing in Val d'Isere. All of that was a quick 2-minute Facebook search. So that email that used to just be, hey, it's HSBC, log into your bank, has now turned into someone spending the time and effort to impersonate someone. Really easy to find personal emails, really easy to send in an email that looks legit. This happens all the time. Firsthand, I've seen this happen. I've seen 140,000 transferred and I've seen 35,000 pounds be transferred just because it's from the chief exec. It's super real, all the details are real, and it's just an email address that's slightly wrong. And real money's changing hands. It's a really, really common one, especially in larger companies at the moment. And again, like I said earlier, for COVID, when you're not in the same office, often that would be a quick chat down the hall to make sure that was real, but now you don't have that. And he's skiing, so he's got no signal. So that's why that works, especially now. Maybe not going skiing at the moment, but you know what I mean. SMS messages as well, same thing, exactly the same. It's not just email anymore, phone calls, SMS messages, phone calls in larger companies where you don't know the person directly. That we've seen a massive uptick in people calling. It's not always, it's usually really slick, polished professionals that are really good at convincing you. SMS messages as well, often with HMRC. Best ways to protect against this are have a financial process where everyone follows it. Like, it's not a technical thing, but it really is making sure the chief exec and the people with access to big budgets aren't sending money informally with email. It just stops that from happening. It's a real pain, but it's really the only way to do that. The other example, by the way, guys, the more personal one, I don't know if any of you have seen this, let me know in the chat if you have, but a friend of yours that's gone abroad on a last minute holiday. Again, COVID's difficult for this one. It was really prevalent a year ago. They've been robbed, they're in hospital, they need some money to pay their medical bill. That was doing the rounds a lot before. I'm sure that's going to kick off again. So if someone gets access to your friend's Hotmail address, yeah, Val's had it 4 times. So I think a few people have seen that one already, but it's really, really real as well. I've got, you know me, I'm last minute. I've just jumped over to wherever and I'm stuck in hospital. Please, can you help me? And it's that, you know, what I said earlier, consequence if you don't help. So have a financial process if you're a large company to protect against the CEO FD type fraud. Be cautious of an email with urgent call to action. Same as I said before, a consequence if you don't do something. Call and check if you can, the person who sent. Just, yeah, that's a good one for the personal one. And if not, just kind of wait. Don't be tempted into do anything urgent. We're going to see this kick up again as soon as people start traveling again, both personally and professionally. Right, on to the big one that everyone knows about, passwords. So passwords has been an interesting conversation for years for technical people, and I'm sure for you all, it's been a real pain for you to constantly change passwords, have a million passwords that you can't remember. And I'm sure you've always got different ways of kind of remembering how you log on to things. Just to set the tone, this is a super kind of recent example about how massive problems are often quite simple. So if any of you heard it, it's been in the news a lot recently, the American pipeline issue, the East Coast pipeline company called Colonial, it's taken offline, fuel shortages across America. You saw the photos of them kind of filling up carrier bags of fuel and all the crazy stuff we saw. Just that whole thing was a single user with a single password. It's just an email address and password gave access to the hackers that got in. Effectively, they got an Excel spreadsheet with a username and password, logged in and did what they needed to do. It wasn't anything super sophisticated. And Colonial paid $4.4 million to get their information back off the back of that one email and one password that was leaked. Had that password been secure, that wouldn't have been a problem. There's many, many, many examples of things that I've seen over the years where super high profile news, PR disaster type stuff is just a person with a dodgy password or really simple, someone's clicked on an email, and it's not often, it's state-sponsored hacking groups. It's often really, really simple stuff. I'm going to put this in the chat later because this is a really, really useful website for everyone. There's a website called Have I Been Pwned? It's a weird name. I won't go into why. But I typed my personal email address, the email address I use for everything outside of work. And as I type my email address in, I can see that that password, that email address has been taken from companies. For mine, it was about 22 different times. So over the years, 22 different breaches, those companies had been hacked, my information had been stolen and then put up for sale on the dark web, which is, if you think of the dark web as just an Excel spreadsheet full of usernames and passwords, that's effectively what it is. So if you want my Kickstarter email address and password from 2014, that's available for a few pence online. If you want my fitness pal and my really slow, unfit jogging times from February 2018, email address, password is available. So your email address, even mine, this is mine as well. So I kind of know what I'm doing in this space, I like to think, and mine has been taken 22 different times. So it's not necessarily a problem because I don't really care if someone has access to my MySpace account from 2008, for example. But if my password for MySpace is also the same password I use for other things, then that becomes more of a problem. Normally people have got a pet's name, a child's name, a grandson or granddaughter with a number at the end. And then going back to what I said earlier on social media is that it's really, really quick to kind of discover that. So quite quickly with a quick search, I could probably find out where you lived, your mother's maiden name from MyHeritage, funnily enough, which leaked my details. The names of your pets, the names of your kids, most of that stuff is normally available online. So having your details taken is a problem. If that's same username, same passwords used everywhere else, that becomes a really, really big problem. Just by way of, I guess, nodding, you guys, have you got different passwords for every single website that you use? No, of course not. No one has. No. And I'm guessing, and don't give away too much, but it's kind of a theme or a multiple. There's 3 or 4 that just kind of do the rounds, and you're up to number 6 or 7 on some of them and that type of thing. Yeah, cool, right. That's the same as everyone. That's not unusual. The other thing that's interesting, I often do when I kind of give this talk live is I make people stand up and let me know how old their password is. And some people, it's kind of 10+ years they've been cycling the same passwords through. So as you can see, MySpace 2008 for me. There were some older ones in there. There's a game I forgot I played before that. So yeah, really old passwords, same passwords in rotation. Everyone does it. This won't be, or hopefully shouldn't be, news to anyone. Charlotte's using the same passwords in rotation as well. We'll talk about that. So long passwords, completely random, completely complex if you can. You guys have all heard this before. Unique for every website, app, and service that you use. So completely different, long and random and complex. The bit everyone forget, and I'll come on to how you do that in a minute, because obviously you can't remember all of that. So random answer, the security questions is often the overlooked bit of this. I don't hear many people talking about that, but let's say you do have a long, random and complex password and it's completely different for every website you use. If I log onto that website and say I forgot my password, it's going to say, what's your mother's maiden name? Or it's going to say, what's the name of the street you grew up on? And we've covered that already a couple of times. That's easy to find. So you've got really complex passwords. Make sure that your reset questions are really, really hard to get hold of the answers to as well. Again, I'll come on to how in a second. A password manager, for me, is the only way that you're going to be able to meet these requirements. I've looked at my password manager yesterday. There's 360 something accounts. So there's no way I can remember 360 passwords that are completely different and unique for everywhere. Is anyone using a password manager at the moment? No, Lindsay is, that's great. So there's a few different options. There's some you need to talk to your IT provider about, ones that will work corporately for you and your business. Personally, there's 1Password, LastPass, Bitwarden. I'll put these in the chat in a minute at the end. So what that does is you have a main password to get into your vault, if you like, and a code you type in on your phone. And when you're in, all of the websites you use, all of the services you use have passwords that are in there. So for me, those 360 I mentioned earlier, I know that all of those passwords are completely unique, and I know that they're completely complex and really, really difficult to work out, and you'd never guess what it was, and I don't know what they are, and I don't care what they are, because as soon as I go on the website, my password manager puts it in. You might have seen it on Apple devices, or when you're on the web where it's remembered your password. It's that type of thing, but a piece of software specifically designed to use a password manager. That's great. And is everyone using multi-factor authentication for everything, the code that you get sent? Yeah, that's a really, I mean, it's good to see you guys are using it. That's a really, really big one, actually. And a lot of the stuff I've said being simple, that Colonial Pipeline hack, had that had 2-factor on it, and that wouldn't have happened. So going back to the slide before with, if you had access, none of these I really care about, but you know, MyFitnessPal, if I had 2-factor on that, even if you knew my username and knew my password, you'd still need the code from my phone. So it's a really, really important one to turn that on for everything. And the one thing I will say, it's worth taking a note of this if you haven't done it, but put that on your email straight away. Your email is the central link to reset all the passwords for everything else. That's kind of that's the main keys for everything for you guys. So if you haven't got multi-factor on your email, make sure you've got that on straight away. And as I mentioned earlier, make sure those password reset questions are super complicated. Although, don't do what I did. I set up an account for British Gas and I generated a load of garbage stuff for the, what's your mother's maiden name? And it was a real long string of nonsense, which is fine and secure. But then I lost access to the account for, billing or whatever, and I had to phone them up. And then when they said to me, great, you just have to pass security, what's your mother's maiden name? And having to read out over the phone, yeah, sure, my mother's maiden name is uppercase J X 3 exclamation mark. So I've learned from that, and make sure the password reset question is just random words. Just make up random words for it, but make sure it isn't real. There's no reason that British Gas need to know my real mother's maiden name. All they're saying is, I'm going to ask you this question. I need to know a response. Your response needs to match what I've got. There's no reason for you to give real information. The exceptions there obviously being anything government, passport, driving license related. You probably want to give them real information. But any other websites, they're just looking for a challenge response type question. So use whatever you want for those words. The last of the 5 controls that aren't overly technical, updates and backup. It's a bit of a boring one, but it's really, really important, this one. So the 3-2-1 rule of backup is that you should have 3 copies of your backup, 2 of them stored in different places. So one of them online, one of them in a different media, one of those copies being completely in a different place. Most IT companies will cover that by standard. Cloud backup means that's really, really super easy. But ransomware was and still is a big deal, although it's not getting the press it used to. What happens there is someone will click a dodgy link in an email and all of the files on the network will start getting encrypted and locked so no one can access them. At that point, you've got 2 options. You can pay the fine to get your files back, or you can restore from your backup. So making sure you've got a really, really solid backup just gives you an option to just restore from backup and not pay that fine. If you do pay the fine, you've probably got a 50-50 chance of getting your files back anyway. The other 50% being that you'll just be asked for more money. So make sure you've got backups in place. Again, personal stuff, make sure you're backing up. iCloud's great. Google Cloud, if you're using phones, just do automatic backup. It kind of set and forget, but for your company backups, your corporate backups, make sure your IT company's doing proper tests regularly and proving they can restore and how long it takes to restore. There's no reason you shouldn't be measuring backup restores in kind of days now. It should be minutes. So if we lose all of our files now, I want it all back in 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. So that should be the standard. Updates are really annoying for everyone. No one wants to do them. It takes your machine out of action for ages, often at the most critical time when you're working on something and it's really late at night and you really need to get stuff done. They are really important to do. A lot of the things that the updates are doing is patching security flaws. If you do accidentally click a link in an email, that update's going to stop doing whatever it should be. So try and schedule time. Again, talk to your IT company to schedule it at a more convenient time, but really make sure you do your updates. And I guess a positive thing of doing the updates, something like Microsoft Teams, I think it's 160 new features it's had in the last 12 months. So not only are the updates giving you kind of security protection, it's also giving you kind of new cool stuff that you deserve to use. So there's the positive reason to do your updates. Val, good question. What happens if someone hacks the password manager? That's a really, really good question. That's often the question we get. I think, so password managers are designed from the ground up to be secure. So just in the same way that I say that I work in cybersecurity, it automatically paints a target on me. So I have to make sure that I can deliver and I've kind of practiced what I preach. The same with any cybersecurity company, you're a target already because you should know better. So password managers are designed from the ground up to be super secure. LastPass, one of the ones I recommend, was hacked a few years ago. They managed to breach to keep it super simple, they breached layer 1 and there were kind of 6 more layers after that before you got to anyone's actual information. So they detected it super early because they've got super great systems. They let everyone know exactly what was happening. They let everyone know the risk. They let everyone know how they got it out. So I'm not saying that they're never going to get hacked. I'm just saying it's really, really, really difficult to do that given what they do, given that it's often a chargeable service. That needs to be secure. Having two-factor on that for your account means it's super secure, but also you kind of need to consider the alternative. So your password being fluffy1, fluffy2, or fluffy3 across everything, I would say is much riskier than having super secure passwords in the password manager. That is designed from the ground up to be super secure. Like none of those are listed on the breaches. So it's worth considering. If you're hypersensitive to the risk part, and I don't like this advice, but an offline book stored in a locked cabinet, old school with passwords in it, is an alternative. But for me, password managers online is a great, GCHQ are recommending that as long as you stick with one of the main providers. I'll put the details in the chat in a sec. So that's the 5 controls. That's the 5 things you should focus on. I'm sure none of that is news to many of you guys. Hopefully some of the more recent, as Sunita said at the start, some of the more sophistication that we're seeing really recently is kind of making this less easy to spot. Social media profiles, vital, staying in touch, friends and family, promoting business, building community. The key protection there is just self-awareness. Just know what you're posting. Know that if you are posting photos of kids or family members or pets, that the names of those things aren't related in any way to your identity and your security. You're not using those details for memorable data. Phishing emails, awareness and training, that's the real fix for that. There's a lot of technical stuff your IT company needs to work on. There's a lot of geeky stuff with DMARC and DKIM and certificates and all sorts of geeky stuff. But the real trick there is get some awareness, get some training, know that the whole company is being trained and you know what you're looking for. There's free things online. There's proper things your IT company, I'm sure, can provide to do that. Social engineering, challenge the question. Make sure it is who they say they are, follow financial processes. If you let the C-suite kind of go around the process, stop that, make sure they don't, make sure they do follow the process. There is a form, make it slick, don't slow down the business, but make sure no one can just kind of short the rules because criminals are counting on that. Passwords, same advice from me, I'm afraid. Keep long, random, complex, unique, the same thing everyone's been talking about for years, but now password managers are really at a point where that's actually possible, rather than IT guys just telling you to do that and remember it, which was our advice up until a few years ago, which is ridiculous. So password manager and multi-factor authentication on everything, whatever you consider most valuable, whether that's Netflix or Amazon or PayPal or email addresses, get multi-factor on that. And updates and backups. And the advice for that is just do it. Do your updates, do your backup, test it, make sure it's all working. And that is that. Has anyone got any questions specifically on what we've talked about, on personal experiences that they've got, they want to kind of help and advice with?
Chris, can you tell us a little bit about evil twinning? Because I know it's one thing you didn't cover, and I'm always a bit worried about it when I'm out and about.
What was that, sorry?
Evil twinning.
What do you mean by that?
So looking at, so you go on your phone and you're trying to look for a
wireless networks.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So evil twinning it's basically for it's mostly for cafes, Wi-Fi hotspots, places like that where people are out and about, and you connect to Costa's Wi-Fi, McDonald's Wi-Fi, wherever you are. Evil twinning is where someone's taken a device into that place and you'll connect to their network instead. The fix for that, again, it's a technical one. Talk to your IT company, but using a VPN. What that will do is give you access. It will bypass the Wi-Fi network you're on. Everything you do will be encrypted and it will be sent securely. So you can connect to any wireless network by using a VPN. You can get personal ones. If you're going to do banking in public Wi-Fi, it's worth looking for a personal VPN. If you want to do that for work, it's worth chatting to your IT company about what VPNs you can use.
Thank you. Has anybody else got any questions?
There's a couple in the chat, actually.
Yeah. I was wondering what your view is on allowing your browser to retain your credentials.
Yes, it's fine. It's the quick answer. If it's Chrome or Edge or Safari for Apple, it's okay. They're encrypted. Some of the password managers offer slicker features. So the ones I'll put in the chat in a second all offer a mobile app and an app for your browser, so that you update a password. Like I said earlier, I've got 360, I think it is, passwords. If I log onto those on my phone, the app is on my phone to put the password in for me. So it's fine for the browser and it's great, but the beauty of a password manager is you can log onto a new device or another, as long as you've got the app and you've signed into the app, all your passwords are there. So really yes, it's fine, but it's slicker to use a password manager. Just going to drop the details in the chat now. Has anyone else got any questions while I'm doing that?
It might be a silly question because I don't know about password managers, but someone's got to ask it and I don't know the answer. So
sure.
If I set up a password manager, I've got to put in a password for me to access that. So that then all my information is stored inside that.
Yep.
So I've got to remember that password that I made for the password manager.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, you remember the one password.
Right.
And that's it. I remember my one password for my vault. And for me, that's 3 long random words that have nothing to do with me or my family or the street I grew up on or anything else that someone might possibly know or guess. But I remember the 3 random words, and I've got numbers and some complex stuff. But I remember that password. When I sign into the vault, it flashes up on my phone and it says, what's the code? Someone's logged in, what's the code?
Right.
Okay. The password and the code is given to me, and that's it. But that's it really. Once I'm in, it's got all of my passwords are there.
Okay. Yeah. It's all right. I'm just thinking if someone got hold of that password.
Yeah, that's where the 2-factor steps in.
Right.
So
okay.
if I told you my email address and I told you my password, as soon as you try and log into my account, my phone's going to flash up and say, someone's just logged into your account. Do you need the code or do you want to block the account?
Yeah.
I'll drop some, there's multiple apps for 2-factor and there's multiple password managers, all of which are as good as each other. I'll put some details in the chat so you can have a look at it. But, that for me is so much more secure than having the same passwords in rotation, especially as those details are probably available online. If you've been using it more than 5 years on lots of different sites, your password is probably online somewhere. The analogy I always use for this to kind of to get people to realize it's kind of like you've gone on holiday and you've left the window open at home. Like the house is secure because no one's tried it, but really it's just a matter of time until someone notices. It's that situation. If you're using the same passwords in rotation, you have been for a while, it's kind of like your house is unlocked and it's just waiting for someone to give it a go. The other thing worth knowing is that if, back to my personal example, say MyFitnessPal, my email address and password for MyFitnessPal is available online. What people will often do is, well, great, that works for MyFitnessPal. Let me try Amazon, PayPal, Hotmail. Let me try other websites. Let me change the 1 to a 2. Really quickly, I could try 10 different websites that would give me much better results than seeing that I'm not very good at running. Like someone could get into my email, which would be way more valuable than just knowing that I'm.
That's what I was going to say. I have a sequence that I do for all my passwords. They're all different, but a sequence, a set way of doing it.
Do you know what? That's kind of good, but also think of if, say, 3 of those get leaked.
Yeah.
You spot the pattern straight away. Yeah. Like some people use the name of the website they're on. Like if there's a pattern or a sequence, it's IT guys' fault really. And our advice has been have individual unique passwords and then no one can remember them. So people come up with patterns or systems or multiples. Password managers fix that problem. They keep us IT geeks happy because they're all different and unique. And they keep everyone else happy because you don't have to remember 1 million passwords and it's all secure.
Okay, great. And I put earlier, you recommended one.
Yeah, I'm gonna as soon as I'm gonna stop sharing actually. There we go. I'll drop the details in the chat for password managers, multi-factor, my details as well.
Right, thank you.
Again, if you're doing this for work, check with your IT company.
Yeah.
Chris, what would your advice be if we were to fall foul and end up with a request for a ransom? Do we pay the ransom? What do we do?
That's a tough one. The official advice is never pay the ransom. My advice, as it has to be official, is don't pay the ransom. The reality is get the backup sorted. Make sure you've got a backup and you can restore from it. That's kind of why I said it in there. Backups is just do it. Make sure your IT provider's doing it. Make sure they can prove that it's working. Make sure they've tested it every month or so if this really is solid. If you pay the ransom, sometimes you'll get the data back. Sometimes you don't. Like Colonial paid. The scary thing on the dark web, they've got basically like review websites. They've got like Yell for criminals. So here's our link. Come onto the dark web, have a look. Look, you can see we've conned 3 million people and we've got a 4-star rating. Quickly restored my data. Thanks. Like that type of horrendous situation is real because it's literally a business. So for them, by providing the unlock keys, they've done a good service, means that the next person they con, it's a weird thing. So officially don't pay the ransom. The reality is if it's your corporate data and you've got no other option, you need to weigh up the risks.
I think that's a good answer. Have we got any more questions?
There's one coming in from Charlotte. What would your advice be for offline backups, storage in the cloud? Cool. It's 3-2-1 rule again, Charlotte. Like 3 copies of the data, 2 different locations, one of them being in a different site. That's fine. It's COVID. Everyone's used to that. Not having video. Yeah, have it in 2 different places. Cloud storage is great. A lot of cloud. This is where it gets techie. This is where you really need to trust and rely on your IT provider because redundancy, all those types of things mean different things to different people. The backup solution we use for backing up Microsoft, for example, is nothing to do with Microsoft and is stored in 2 of their different data centers, and we then back that up to a 3rd. So if any one of the 3 parts of the backup go down, we've still got access to the others. So really, it's just making sure and asking the right questions. Offline backups is great. Client backups is great. You need to have both to make sure that you're covered both ways. Just going to put some links in the chat. There we go.
Brilliant. And I think we can share some of these links as a blog post at some point as well. So we've got it all in one place for anybody who's watching this back. Then we've got all of the information for you that Chris has shared this morning because it is really useful.
Yeah, the other bit I didn't really touch on, but Microsoft and Google have both got an authenticator app, they call it. And it's instead of getting a text message with the code, it's an app on the phone with all the different accounts on. It's just a much slicker way. I'm just going to type those details in the chat as well. It's a much slicker way when you do sign in every 30 days or when you sign in from a new device and it needs to check it's you. It's just you open the app, we hit accept on the phone. It's just quicker than messing around trying to get a signal for a text message.
I use it. It is really useful. I seem to use it a lot, actually.
Awesome. Val's had to shoot. Has anyone got any other questions or anything you want to run through? Was that useful for everyone? Good.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Thank you, Chris.
No worries.
And we will share. You're going to do this email test, are you, to everybody?
I'll send it out to everyone who's come here. I'll send it from me so you guys can see that it's legit. I don't want to kind of half trick anyone. As long as you're all kind of giving consent and we've got this recorded, I'm not going to get in trouble with GDPR, then we're all good with that. So I'll send you a dummy email just to really show you guys how good it kind of can look quite easily. And it'll when you click on the link, it will show you what your phishing training is. So forward that to your IT provider, whatever you want to do. I would strongly suggest that that is a campaign that all companies are running right now. It's really affordable. An awareness piece is really, really critical.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, thanks again for your time this morning, Chris. Really useful stuff that I'm sure we can all implement in our businesses and in our personal lives. It's good to see you all, and we will share with you soon the next event. I haven't got anything lined up apart from our afternoon tea at Camberwell Park, when we actually see people in the flesh. That will be a novelty. But yeah, it's great to see you all this morning. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so
Okay,
much.
thank you very much. Cheers.